So we have 3 wonderful speakers, too short a time for all of them. So I would like to introduce the first, who will speak for about 15 minutes or less, as she wishes, Karen Leibovici, who is the president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. You can choose. Okay.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here and to see this good turnout for a very important discussion around women transforming cities. I just want you to know that when Ellen first approached me about this, probably almost 2 years ago, and the idea, I thought that would be really neat because it would be at the culmination of my time as president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And one of my focuses as president is to bring forward the issue of women in politics, to try and be a role model, as I know each and every one of you probably are in this room, for younger women to think about being part of politics and think about being part of the political system, and as well to ensure that our organization, as the organization of Federation of Canadian Municipalities, would be friendly to women in politics too. I am the only woman that's on the table officers. We have another woman here, Susan Fennell, who's going to be running for the 3rd vice president position. She's out of Ontario and near Brampton, so I think we need to give her a hand. And when you look at the history of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which has a history of over 100 years, you can count probably on one hand the number of women that we have had as president. So we definitely need to keep encouraging our elected women to put their name forward. This conference brings attention to the importance of increasing women's involvement in shaping their cities and in creating that ideal city. And I'd like to thank the conference organizers for their perseverance. I know this has been a hard go for each and every one of you, and dedication to ensuring that women and girls' voices are heard. And obviously, I'm very pleased to be able to be here and to hear what the panel will have to say. Unfortunately, my duties are such that I can't stay for the whole conference, and I couldn't come this morning either. We had the Big City Mayors Conference at the same time, and around that table, 22 big city mayors. There were 3 women, Susan, or 4 of us. And one was representing the mayor, so actually 2 were representing their mayors who were male. So in actual fact, Susan was really the only true mayor sitting around that committee. So, now, at FCM, we represent, just to give you a little bit of background, how many of you know about the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, who we are, what we do? Actually, there's a good number of you here, that's great. For those that don't, and our annual general meeting is being held here in Vancouver this year. We have a meeting across every year at different cities across the country, those that are big enough to host us. We have close to 2,000 locally elected representatives from across the country that are attending the AGM. And so if you're walking up and down the street, you're going to see a lot of elected politicians. You might even see some from your own province or from municipalities that you're from. We have close to 2,000 members. And that smallest community has about 50 citizens to the city of Toronto. We also represent from coast to coast to coast, rural and urban communities, large and small. 1,500 of our members are actually small communities that basically are communities under 100,000. We have on our member board, I chair a board of 75 elected representatives, again, from coast to coast to coast. And again, when I look around the table, we could do better in terms of the representation of women that are sitting around that table. But we are working hard at FCM to ensure that in actual fact that we are a voice and a strong voice for issues relating to women. And just to give you an idea of the magnitude, we represent 90% of the Canadian population. So we have a good idea of what's going on across Canada. We've been actively involved for 10 years as a focus on increasing women's involvement in local government. Not that we weren't before, but it wasn't a policy platform of ours. It wasn't a focus that you could go to the website and you'd see that there's a standing committee on increasing women's participation in local government. And in fact, with Susan and I were both on the board, and I think Pam, I saw Pam McConnell somewhere. There you are, and Bonnie's there, she's also on our board. So very strong women. If you want to know about what's happening at FCM, am I missing any other board members here? No. Well, Pam was one of the founders, and Pam has been unbelievable in the work that she's doing in Toronto, and Bonnie's looking at running for mayor as well in the area of Montreal in the upcoming municipal elections. And about 10 years ago, when we sat around the board table, there was a little bit of a discussion around, okay, you've got this ad hoc group. And Pam, if I'm off with my story a little bit, I tend to embellish as I go along. But there was this ad hoc group of women, and we came together, and we sort of had support to do so. And there was a little bit of research support that was thrown our way. And our meetings were always at god-awful hours, and we'd get together and we'd talk about, okay, what can we do? What can we do to enhance the role of women in local government, again, across the country? And at the end of the day, we decided, well, we needed to have some standing within the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. We needed to be a standing committee that was recognized, just like the Standing Committee on Municipal Finance, just like the Standing Committee on Rural Issues, Forum actually, on Rural Issues, and the Forum on Northern Issues, and the Standing Committee on Communities, that we needed that status within FCM. And we brought it to the board, and it was with our male peers who were our strongest advocates, but it was because of a lot of the work that we had done, and they recognized, many of them had played mentorship roles with the women within their communities and the women also on their councils to bring them on board and to mentor them, and they were our strongest advocates in making sure that when we brought it to that board of 75, I might have said 85 later, 75, that in fact it was passed. And we were considered a standing committee and that was then able to go out and talk to the Status of Women Canada, for example, and other organizations, Equal Voice, to look at, okay, what kind of programs could we start to put together and to put forward. So with the Status of Women Canada, we have put forward a series of programs and resources which are designed to encourage and prepare women to run for municipal office. And we see that our efforts are key to setting the stage for women to transform their communities, their cities that they live in. I strongly believe that, and I know my board members and those who are in our municipal politics believe that local government is the order of government that's closest to everyday Canadians. And it is also the best place to start to have women involved in decisions that concern their daily lives so that you can leverage their knowledge and capabilities in promoting the development of sustainable communities. We also work internationally. We do lots of good work nationally. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But internationally, we also do work in Africa, Asia, Ukraine, just to name a few of the areas that we're in, to support the full participation of women in all aspects of public and political life, including, in some cases, the right to vote, which we take for granted, the right to stand for election, which we take for granted, and the right to hold public office, also something that we here in Canada take for granted. And just to give you a little bit of a flavor, I'm totally not going by my notes, just to give you a little bit of a flavor, I had the opportunity to go to Paris where the UCLG, so the United Union of Communities and Local Governments, was meeting to do exactly what we had done at FCM, which was through the leadership of the Deputy Mayor of Paris to put together a standing committee on increasing women's participation in local governments at the international level. And we in Canada are the North American representative on that particular body. I wanted to make sure that we would be the North American representative because of the work that we have done in Canada as the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And in fact, that particular committee is now up and running, and I know will make a huge difference on an international scale. We also know, and you all know what the stats are in terms of how many Canadian municipal politicians are women, right? I don't need to go through that. No, okay. And part of what really struck me internationally were the barriers that women had to go through. We have barriers too here in this country, but their barriers were along the lines of just the ability to put their name on a ballot. Even when they won an election, they were considered as non-entities, and in fact had to hold 2 or 3 other elections just to prove that they had won the first election that they had run. So there were huge barriers on the international scale, but in terms of the sisterhood, at least we can talk to each other and we can have an understanding and build on each other's experiences. Now here in this country, 24% of all Canadian politicians are women, which, you know, when you think of it, over 50% of the population, that ain't so good. But that's up from 20% in 2004, and currently 60% of mayors and 25% of councillors are women. And again, compared to 2004, marginally better on the mayor's piece of it, which is 11%. And in terms of the councillor piece, we've actually gone up as well. It was 22%. Now, our goal at FCM is with regards to the United Nations standard of 30% of female representation, because that's the minimum that they have said, and I agree it should be more than that, but that's the minimum that they have said is required before a policy begins to adequately reflect women's concerns. And what we've done is at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I'm not going to go through why it's so important. I know our speakers here will go through why it's so important to have women on council and to have elected women to make sure that our issues are part of the political discussions. But what we've done at FCM in partnership with Status of Women Canada is we offer campaign schools, which have been very successful across the country. 40% of our participants actually are elected. We also have a protege program, which was the brainchild of Pam, and Edmonton has followed Toronto's example. We've adapted it a bit. And what the protege program does, and we now have Status of Women Canada Women funding, to also have it in different communities across the country so we can establish some of those best practices. And what it is that we mentor young women to follow us around, to engage in what we do as politicians on a daily basis. At the City of Edmonton, I can talk about that program. Our City Clerk's office has taken this under her leadership, and there are courses that the proteges go to find out what do you have to do to get a bylaw passed, what do you have to do in order to become a councillor, and all those kinds of things. And so there's the job shadowing. The difference between our program and Toronto's, and maybe some of the others, is we have some of our male councillors who have agreed to be mentors as well. We I've talked already about the programs that we have in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Ukraine. And at the conference in just a couple of days, I believe it will be, we will be announcing our newest Women in Local Government program, again in partnership with the Status of Women Canada. And it's going to focus on our future. It's going to focus on that young leadership, the girls who are that future for us, and we need to start developing and nurturing that new generation to be involved and civic-minded. It's going to run for 18 months, the program, just to give you a little bit of a hint, a teaser as to what it is. And we'll work with local governments across Canada to deliver a project that is national in scope. We're also going to be reaching out to community groups, and we haven't quite defined them, whether it's the YWs, whether it's the Girl Guides, but community groups, so that we can start to develop those local champions within our communities in order to ensure that it's much more broad-based. We have to become, I believe, much more organic in our approach and much more looking at it coming from the bottom up as opposed to the top down. So our goal at the end of the day is to increase the capacity of young women to identify and respond to the barriers that are in their way, and for us to help. In identifying and responding and changing those barriers that influence and affect their ability to fully participate in civic, political, and community life in Canada. So looking ahead over the next 10 years, we have our sights set on developing that particular program, as well as I'd like to see a bolder program that will continue to help the next generation of women leaders. And that will be able to provide an opportunity for women of all cultural backgrounds and regions to recognize their potential. We see a future, hopefully, where we not only reach the 30% goal, but we exceed that 30% goal of participation of women in local government. And I know by the conference that you've put together today, and I know Ellen, where's Ellen? I saw her. Ellen somewhere in the back as one of the co-chairs, that with your dedication and perseverance that you will make sure that we will be traveling together on this path to make our cities much more livable for everyone. So thank you very much.